Welcome. I'm going to be introducing you to the world of cybersecurity threats. And at the end of this module, you should be able to understand cyber threats and the impact they can have, identify and assess the different types of threats, vulnerabilities, and the threat actors. So let's start with threats. What's a threat? There's this quote from Robert S. Miller saying that there are only two types of companies: those that have been hacked and those that will be, meaning that the threat actually never ends. There's always going to be people and actors making attempts to try to compromise a company's systems, and that's just a fact of life. If you haven't been hacked, you are still under threat of getting hacked. So a threat is just a potential danger to an information asset. It can be to a person, to a particular data, to an application or whatever. It's a bad thing that may happen. And cyber threats can come in various forms. You can have malware threats, you can have social engineering, there's insider threats, there's malicious hackers. And you have to recognize that threat is different to attacks, right? You have threat can be something like a warning or a potential danger, but an attack is when a harmful action actually happens. A threat is a situation, something that could cause harm or problems in the future, and when you have an attack, someone follows through with the threat and does something harmful. Think of it like this: a threat can be something like someone is saying, "I might do something bad if you don't do what I want." It might not even in the world of cybersecurity, it might not be like direct, where someone is saying that I will do this. You just know that something is a threat because of the nature of what it is. Because there are malicious hackers out there. There's already a threat. They might not send you an email saying we're going to hack you, but they're a threat. An attack is the bad thing that happens. Something becoming a reality. An attack can either be successful or not, but we'll get into attacks in a future module. So think about it like this: you can have a situation where an old person is walking on the streets and there's a mugger, not necessarily an old person, it can be anybody walking down the streets, and you have a mugger or someone that's looking to steal some money. That person is a threat, poses a threat to that person. But it doesn't become an attack until the person actually tries to take the victim's bag or whatever, and that can lead to other things like someone getting injured. So we have different types of cybersecurity threats. You can have malware. Ransomware is a type of threat. Data exposure. You have insider threats. You have threats to identities. You have the threat of social engineering. So when we look at malware, the threat that malware poses is that there's a potential for malicious software to infect the system. When you look at data exposure as well, this is something that a lot of different types of threat actors can do, which is expose data. They can steal it, and try to sell it as well. Um, and then you can have a situation where there is ransomware as well. Ransomware is a type of threat, and the threat it poses to the organization is that it could lead to loss of data, it could lead to like breakdown of your systems, it could also lead to reputational damage, especially if the data is leaked outside. And of course, you have insider threats. You have employees, you have people that have access within your organization, and you know if that is not properly managed, that could lead to either malicious or non-malicious incidents happening. Um, Zero day is a type of vulnerability that we're going to explain more of in a future video, but it's basically there's always a possibility that undiscovered vulnerabilities might be exploited. right? And when you don't, the vulnerability isn't even known, then how do you fix it? Sometimes by the time the vulnerability is known, it's already being exploited. So that makes things a little bit tricky. Then you also have the password threats. You could have a situation where um, compromised passwords are exploited, and if you're not keeping track of threat actor activity, or you're not keeping track of leaked data, um, there's always the possibility that there are some leaked passwords that affect your organization. And then when it comes to social engineering, of course, there's always a possibility that humans can be manipulated. So this is true for every organization or every individual. We all can be exploited, and we need to put that into consideration when we start talking about social engineering. So, what's a threat actor? A threat actor is just an entity, can be an individual, a group, an organization that is involved in malicious activities. So, they have different motives, they have different capabilities. Some of them are motivated by money, some of them are motivated by some kind of ideology, whether it's political or something else. Some of them just want to spy, and some of them just want to cause disruption or sabotage. They don't have anything else to gain but just disruption. So we have individual hackers. They're just like, you know, hacking for fun or whatever. Sometimes it might be for financial gain as well. You have organized cybercrime groups that actually run for profit. They have organizations, they have partnerships, they have services and products that they offer to each other. And that makes them really dangerous because they organize, they cooperate, they have complex systems. Um and when they band together, it makes them even more of a threat. We also have hacktivists. These ones might be motivated by a social cause. For instance, a hacktivist group relating to climate, for instance, might try to attack an organization that they believe has like a massive carbon footprint or has a negative impact on the environment. We also have state-sponsored attackers. um, Sometimes you might see them being called APTs or advanced persistent threats. They're usually backed by entire nations, and they have the budget, they have the capabilities to launch highly complex and highly advanced attacks. And what even makes them even more threatening is the fact that they can't be, just because there's a country that is backing them up. It's very difficult to kind of arrest them unless they go into another country where the country that backs them doesn't have any influence. We also have insider threats, as mentioned before. Every organization has people within that organization that have access to certain things. So sometimes you might have malicious insiders. Sometimes people just make mistakes, and that is also a threat. So we need to build strong defenses against cyber threats, and we need to be able to understand the threats. We need to be able to understand um, how they work, and we need to be able to tailor our defenses to be up to date. And of course, security by design is always going to be a good thing to do, because regardless of how threats evolve, if your um, organization, if your systems are secure by design, then it's much easier to protect against threats, instead of like, you know, developing it and then start thinking about security later. And of course, cyber awareness is always a good thing to have. Thank you, and we will meet in the next lesson.